All right, welcome back. This is SCP-CRMP, aka Lack of Lepers, and I want to thank you for joining me tonight. You may have noticed a few changes already. We've got a different logo up top here, and that is because we are making a shift in the show and in the content. This week has been enlightening. It has been a trial test attempt, and it became very, very clear as I pour this nice beverage. It became very, very clear over the past 4 days that if I were to continue reading SCPs from the previous day, I would kill myself. I would not make it. And there's a few reasons for that. And actually, I had to write it down just to kind of get it expressed. So here it is. I've been reading daily SCPs every night now for not even a week yet, and I think this is going to end me. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of it is just great, but there's just so much of it that isn't, and the really good ones often are the most underappreciated. Maybe it's because a contest just happened at the SCP Wiki, and so lots of higher competition writers are taking a break. I don't know. I think it's a combination of runaway selection. The more popularity you have, the higher the influx of truly mediocre material. That's not necessarily true for really, really good material or really bad material. And then you have talented authors who are satisfied to write on a compositional level well below their capabilities in order to make more trendier content and satiate whatever ego metric that they are after, instead of the best writing that they can put out, which then other authors mimic worse, more poorly, probably because upvotes. And so the whole wiki, in my opinion, has been compressed into this narrow band of just never-ending shrug that rarely gets broken out of. Even authors as respectable as Tanhoney, we've seen, are subject to this compression pressure, something like that blatantly mimetic Among Us article. And so I guess the word for it might be disappointing. There's something special that used to be at the SCP. I think it's absolutely gone. I think it's been diluted. Far outside, inflated far beyond its original value. Maybe it's because RPC just had a contest as well, and I'm reading those entries, which are by very high competition authors, but the average quality of the RPC articles that I'm reading seem, in my opinion, to have completely surpassed the reading experience at SCP to me, if only due to the lower influx of mediocre works. So all in all, the SCP, reading it is exhausting and not very rewarding. I can't say that for RPC. And I can't say that for other things that I used to react to in this fashion prior to starting this nightly stream. Things like podcasts that people from the SCP space do, other things around the containment fiction space. So, just for the, I think, only individual who's watching this, I was kind of concerned that might be me. But I thought that on the chance that one up there is someone else, I thought I'd give you some justification as to why it is, unfortunately, that I just cannot I cannot read those SCPs anymore. Once again, some of the SCPs are fantastic. You know, there's a couple that I read there. That one about the guide mast, the one about the time loop. I mean, those are just absolutely fantastic SCPs. But unfortunately, just from a time management position, from a quality of life position, it's absolutely hopeless that those nice articles would counterbalance the dredge and the sludge that, in my opinion, I would have to get through in order to do that show. So I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I'm not afraid to swing and miss. And I technically don't regard changing gears for the show as a failure. In fact, I regard recognizing that it's not going to work, and I regard abandoning the task of reading SCPs as a massive success to me. I already feel better. I was losing sleep about reading tonight. Just not good. There's double the amount of SCPs coming out yesterday than what we usually do, which is about 2. I just can't do it. You know, maybe that's me thing, maybe that's an SCP thing, but I just can't. So I apologize. But, I tend to really, really like doing this. I have a great time doing it despite the content of the SCPs that I was reading. So I kind of want to keep doing this. Another thing to mention, just housekeeping, is that I'm currently on paternity leave, so I'm not really working my day job right now. That'll end at some point, and I'll have to go back to my work. So I also need to find something that's going to mesh a little better with just my time constraints and just that 2-hour show with the SCPs and all the prep work that I have to do to get Brian, God love him, God rest his soul, to read these things along with his AI mates. It just was not feasible. It's just not. So I appreciate whoever's been watching, sticking through me with that trial. I can't do it. I just absolutely can't do it. I'm sorry. It totally defeated me, and I just can't. I'm totally black-pilled about the SCP. I think the amount of content coming out of it is not worth it. I just don't. So we are going to go back to what I was doing previously. If you haven't checked it out on the SCP Meta page on Twitch, there is a link that goes to the rest of my reaction videos, and that is a BitChute channel. So there's a lot of content on that. We are actually dual streaming right now with YouTube, so these will also be up on YouTube. I did delete all the other reading SCPs because I just didn't want to give anybody who comes to the channel the idea that I'm still doing that. I'm not. But if you really want, just send me a message and I'll put those up on the YouTube channel. I don't really think people would care. So having said that, we're going to get back to where my heart and soul truly is in listening to other content. I think it's really a better format than having AI read the SCPs anyway. So we're going to dive right back in. If you hadn't been, I would recommend checking out that BitChute channel. The link, once again, is on the site, on the Twitch information for the channel. And basically, we've been listening to DrGears. DrGears did an interview with Shawn Saxum, whose YouTube channel is Shawn Saxum, but there's a podcast associated with it. This is episode 15 of the Creative Stuff podcast. This has been an incredibly interesting, just a gripping interview with DrGears. Been very, very interesting for me to listen to, particularly in that he seems to echo many of the things I've said. And so it's very encouraging to hear someone who I revere so much agree with me independently about some things about the SCP Wiki and about writing in general. So we're going to continue with this, and at this point we are about 2 hours into it. There's about 38 minutes remaining. So I don't know if we'll finish it tonight because I talk a lot, but we'll see what we can get through. So let's pick it up. So this is about at the 2 hour mark. There is a link I can share. Let's just show that. That's what we're doing. You can just YouTube that later. Of course, that'll be in the show notes. All right, let's get back to where my heart is.
Crazy. I guess it's just the reset you need.
That's quite an introduction. What vibrato in that laugh. My God. Excellent job. Tell you what, let me turn down this background music ever so slightly. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, all I have to do is get past writing blocks, lose a kidney. Fuck, that's easy. I got 2 of them. So there you go. Not saying that's advice. Good God, no. I'm just saying.
Hope you writers are taking notes out there.
Is someone taking it? They write it down, No, fucking don't.
Experiencing a writing block, just remove an organ.
Remove an organ. I mean,
just get cancer. I mean, a brush with death will reinvigorate you.
You just, one of them things.
You don't need all your fingers. You can type it.
I mean, you got 2 ears.
That's true.
You got 2 of a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Creativity versus organ. I mean, you got 2. No. They banned content warning. Jeez.
Okay, well, before we wrap things up, I asked a bunch of people who are involved in the wiki what some questions they would want to ask you are. I got a lot of really good responses, but we don't really have time to ask all of them.
All right, let's get
So I'm just going to choose 3 of my favorites.
All right, let's go.
So, okay, it wanted me to ask, is there a rewrite of SCP-682 in the works?
No. I mean, does one exist? Maybe. I'm unaware of it. Again, I've had a difficult relationship with the 682 in this article since writing it and since the rewrite and everything like that. But at this point, it's like, it's good or bad, it is what it is. It exists.
Yeah, don't change it. Don't change it.
Does a rewrite exist? Maybe.
Please
it's got
don't.
nothing to do with me. I haven't participated, so
please don't
it does
do
exist.
that.
It's out there, but no, there is not.
I'm pretty sure DJ Cactus was talking about rewriting it. The DJ Cactus went through a phase in like 2019, 2018, something like that, where he tried to assimilate as many old articles as he possibly could to not so much to clean them up quality-wise, but more so to ruin the nostalgia of them and buff up, pad the upvote total in the process.
At least not, of my understanding, would it be interesting to rewrite 682? Maybe. I don't think you could rewrite it and still have it be kind of as iconic as this.
No, you can't, man. You can't do that.
The brevity of it, man, and kind of how short that it is. I would be really tempted to explain.
Yeah, please don't.
More. But no, there's nothing in the.
Please don't rewrite 682.
Okay, fair enough. Was there another one that you particularly wanted me to ask?
Let me see. What got you into writing? I guess because that's a generally good question because I kind of touched on it, but not much.
Well,
reading.
I kind of asked that.
Oh, okay,
almost directly.
Well, why don't you pick one? You keep shooting my shit down. Why don't you do it? You want to be that way.
Shawn wasn't your shit down. I was the only one.
I don't care where you want to be. No, goddamn, I ask you.
It's been a great interview, by the way. If you haven't heard this, it's just so good. It's just so good.
Okay. Here's a question from DJ Cactus. Okay. DJ Cactus wanted me to ask: would you change any of your old articles in any way with the experience you've gained since you read them?
Oh God.
He's like, hey, you want to rewrite anything? I want those fucking upvotes. Very good question, DJ Cactus. No ulterior motive. Oh, I just peeked the mic. Sorry. No ulterior motive whatsoever with that question at all.
Probably cold. There's probably cold. Honestly,
like
I said, my 001 article, I would fix a fair bit of that.
Oh God, please don't.
Amusingly, it's not so much the main entries that I would change. It's a lot of times logs and extra stuff I would tweak.
That's fine.
A little bit since I developed.
That's fine.
But I've always kind of been of the opinion, when I write something, that's it.
If you didn't listen to the whole podcast, DrGears he's very ashamed of his 001. He thinks it's terrible. But we talk about that in a previous video on the BitChute, so check that out.
Fuck with it too much, because when you start it's like trying to line up your sideburns. You're gonna goof it up just a little bit each time. Then you bolt.
Yes. What a great analogy! Or it's like that one snip of your hair. That I'm just gonna cut one little strip of hair, and then suddenly you look like Edward Scissorhands had a go at it.
And to a certain extent, when I write, I kind of it kind of just comes out, and then it's there. And I try to leave it alone. But if I had the opportunity to go back and tweak some stuff, I might. I honestly might.
Knowing when to quit is probably the hardest thing to do in art.
But I think with some of them, it's they're so much kind of a part of what it is, and they kind of stand as signposts in my progression to a certain extent. I wouldn't want to tweak them too much. I would go back. What I would do is the articles I've had deleted, because I have some too. Absolutely, I have several actually that have been deleted. I would go back and edit those to try and get them to stand the test of time. If they were salvageable, I'd make the attempt. But stuff that's here and is doing well, or at least is there, I would generally leave alone. But I would definitely pick the stuff that's been deleted, and some of my more janky side logs and stuff like that. So sort of
you can. Technically you can go do that if you really want.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. Okay, I know I said I was going to ask 3, but there's another one here that I really want to ask.
All right,
I'm going to pronounce this wrong. But Tao McCauley asks, what's your favorite interpretation of DrGears as a character that you didn't write?
See, now this is one of the things. This is one of the issues I run into, because, like it or not, I'm kind of a distinctive person in the wiki, and sometimes people make a big deal about my approval or disapproval. So it's very much, who's your favorite kid? It's I love all of you. And then quietly in the ear, it's like, I love you, my love. No, but no, quietly in the corner. But no, it's DrGears has shown up periodically in other works, which is always so weird to me that happens. Then I kind of, there's a couple I'm kind of have maybe in mind, but I'm kind of demur off of that. But that makes
I don't know why, but Dr. Clef really has taken the stranger interpretation in the fanfic world. I mean, if DrGears also has a bunch of erotic fan fiction written about him, I don't know about it, and I sure as hell hope he doesn't either.
He's gonna be upset. Too bad. It's on the radio. I don't know what to tell you. But generally speaking, I like seeing DrGears when he's not necessarily a robot. He's just cold. As things has progressed, as his character and the general existence has progressed, he's kind of shifted, at least in my eyes, to kind of become like the avatar of the Foundation. This stony, still functional, still human, but if it comes down to ordering, a small pile of puppies to be ground into goo so that the rest of reality can exist, that's how it's going to be today.
So that's interesting, because it's just so funny how, and this is how any self-insert is sort of masturbatory. I think you can excuse it on the early days of the wiki. I'm not talking about the LOL Foundation stuff. That got absolutely absurd. But the interesting thing about this is that, DrGears as a character in the Foundation, he is the cold, not cruel. And that cold, not cruel philosophy has absolutely left the modern day SCP Wiki when it comes to most people's casting of what the Foundation is in universe. Usually at the expense of out of universe desires. Like let's write the Foundation this way so that it speaks to our political preferences, for example. So DrGears himself and the character have sort of waned over the years, and so has that philosophy. So it's just an interesting thing to observe that we get a lot of tandem influence and sort of osmosis, diffusion from the actual people who are popular and who are, for lack of a better word, directing the SCP Wiki. It's a shame that we don't have someone like DrGears anymore.
And just this, sort of in the way that the Foundation is sort of this monolithic entity, not really good, not really bad, just is. The same way that Gears is. And I like kind of seeing people when they kind of use him as the standard. He is sort of the yardstick by which people are measured.
Sure.
Of degrees of crazy, like too extreme or unextreme, or human or unhuman. So are you north or south of DrGears? He's sort of the center of the compass to a certain extent. It's like, are you better or worse than him? And it was kind of this idea that he's just there, like he's this entity that is as much a part of the Foundation as like locks and paper reports and ID tags.
Yeah, for
it's
sure,
like somewhere,
for sure.
Somewhere in some grim part of, the facility, regardless of what facility you're at, he's kind of like this presence where it's just like he's there. In the same way that people just kind of address it. It's almost like weather. He's just something that exists, and I like it when he's kind of treated like not overly involved, but also like almost kind of like a side character, sort of referenced here and there. There was one second.
Oh, right.
I have to do this. I'm sorry. Oops. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but I thought it was funny as shit.
Go ahead.
We were having a discussion at one point of like various oddball researchers, and this is before things got cleaned up a little bit. And we had a lot of oddball researchers, and like one of the things that was mutually established, if the opportunity presented itself, was like if there was like a montage of walking through with a bunch of researchers, like one of them is just basically like a baby in like a mobile high chair with like general gear, like kind of like tapping away to laptops. Like, what the fuck is that? It's just, that's Dr. Kinder. He's had troubles and just like keeps moving. Because Kinder means child in like German. Like that was considered the height
That's
of
pretty
comedy.
funny.
So I have past that. There was years. I don't know if anyone remembers that conversation. I don't think anybody does. But there was like this establishment that Dr. Kinder is canon, and I have been working to try and find some way to work that into a story or log or something without it being stupid as shit. It hasn't worked yet.
Good luck. Well, if anybody can do it, you can.
Out there. If you need
it almost sounds like that that baby character. Y'all remember that '90s sitcom Dinosaurs? It was like, I think it was on Disney or something, or maybe Disney just owns it now. It's still on Disney Plus, by the way. If you're into that, you can check it out. It's almost like that baby dinosaur, gotta love me. I'm the baby, gotta love me, kind of thing.
Good gag. Dr. Kinder is canon. So there it is. I'm sorry. Just made me think. I'm sorry. I just made
so
me
confused.
Think anyway,
you're all good.
Moving right along.
I've never heard of that.
No, nobody had. It was so long ago. It was so long ago.
This is wrong.
It still tickled me. I still think about it periodically. It's like Dr. Kinder. This is like a baby just walking around. I was like, oh yeah. Like just dismiss. It's like, oh yeah.
Very creative author avatar. I love that.
He's not feeling well. What the hell, man?
Okay. Last question I'm taking from someone else before we move on to the final closer.
All right.
Jackrabbit, who I recently had on SCP Authors Anomalous episode 5, go check it out. Wanted me to
probably
ask,
will.
How do you feel about off-site content?
Shawn Saxum, by the way, just assuming that you haven't seen my BitChute channel, has a really, really good cast of interviews. First, we listened to the DJ Cactus one, and then we listened right after that to the Randomini one, which I think was way better. And then now we're listening to the DrGears one, which I think is the best so far. But there's another show that this creator has called SCP Authors Anomalous, and he's done several episodes, I think 7 or 8, and we're definitely going to listen to those next, probably right away. Just to review it, that's basically all we've done. I've done these 3 podcasts now for Shawn Saxum, and did a series on Simply Creative People, episodes, I think 1 and 2 and 3. So I haven't really felt a strong desire to get back into Simply Creative People, honestly. I think personally, if I'm not if I'm not anything but completely transparent, it would be because Harry Blank joined, and I just don't like that guy.
About your work.
That is really cool. I generally speaking, I love it. Like I am absolutely the dweeb in YouTube, SCP Foundation, something or other. Checking out stuff. I watch videos. I watch, recordings and readings and all this kind of stuff. There's fan art. They have fan art of shit that I've made. Like I'm such a dweeb about it. I think it's very, very cool.
Yeah, that's real cool, man. Real cool.
Do I get a little spicy when they get it wrong? Absolutely. I don't know why.
Why what?
Why, in heaven's name?
Why what?
Everyone seems to put Gears in a gay relationship with Dr. Iceberg.
I was actually just looking through.
That's funny. So there is erotic fan art that he knows of. So sorry about that, buddy.
Like Google images of DrGears, and there's so much of it.
It's like one of my greatest fears is that people will take it in just horribly sexual directions if anything I wrote ever got popular.
A lot of it, and a lot of it's really good. It's like real shit. I don't like it.
If you say so.
But it's really well done. It's like,
oh god.
No,
if you say so, man. If you say so.
There's absolutely
right now.
That's the thing. It's like really
no
good. I saw a
thanks.
whole montage. There's like 2 music, like a 4-minute video of music of just homoeroticism between Gears and Iceberg.
Sorry, man. I mean, nothing against no homo. I mean, nothing against homo. I'm just saying, like,
in the grand scheme of things, if that cracks your whip, fantastic.
If that cracks your whip, I'd feel that way about any eroticism. By the way, not homoerotic, just any eroticism. Very strange.
No, there's a lot of it. But
there is a lot of it.
Seeing some of the creativity is amazing. Like, what was it? SCP Foundation Anime or SCP Anime.
He's trying to be so polite. You're seeing the creativity in the smut on Rule 34. It's just so creative. I just love it so much.
Which is very, very cool to see. And it's kind of interesting sometimes seeing like shit that I've done or things that I know very, very well, sort of interpreted through other eyes. But it's seeing just the absolute creativity. Seeing various things that I've written, like 914 as a spunky anime girl. It's like, that's awesome. It's weird, but that's awesome. It's I think it's very, very cool. I very much encourage it. It's do people get it right all the time? Oh fuck no, not at all. People will fuck shit up and get different ideas about things.
Sure.
But I think it's if you have a big community like this, or you have something big and important, you're gonna get stuff like it. People are gonna draw and write and do stuff about it. As far as writing and stuff goes, that's weird. Like it seems weird to me. Like why wouldn't you have it on the site? Why wouldn't you have it a part of things?
All right, so we are going to take a quick little pause there. So the way this is working is that I'm also recording on my computer, and if I'm going to upload these to BitChute, which is really the home, the reason is I don't want to put a lot of stuff into YouTube. I don't really want to invest a lot of the stuff that I'm putting out into YouTube because I don't trust YouTube. YouTube is asshole. Basically, they can just decide to ban you at any time, and I don't want to put a lot of stuff on there because however much I contribute to YouTube is leverage that can be used to puppet me, in political directions or whatever. And I'm not saying that YouTube would certainly care about me. I'm small fries, but someone in the SCP who might not agree with what I'm saying, particularly if we get a little political, I am sure would try to leverage that against me, as they have done in the past, by the way. I have a Medium blog that was flagged, just massive email complaint campaign from SCP people. They got that temporarily suspended for 24 hours, just with the stipulation that I had to remove certain content that they wanted me to remove, that they felt was insensitive from a political standpoint. And the same thing happened with the Confic Wiki, which was previously on Mirahees, which is a wiki farm. That was also flagged, and basically the accusations which were leveled against myself and Harmony were completely false. But nonetheless, those platforms can be weaponized, okay? And so that's why I don't put a lot of stock into those things. I don't put a lot of creative output and creative stock into something like YouTube. So all that to say, I've basically just been stalling while I've been saving that 20-minute clip. And so now we'll start another 20-minute clip. All that to say, I'm going to put all this on YouTube. So, I mean, on BitChute. Sorry. So let's finish this up. So we're about 214, 215 in. The total thing is 240, so I think we'll finish this.
But especially things like art and music and stuff like
we are on 1.5 speed, by the way, just in case DrGears doesn't talk quite that fast.
Something I can plug for absolutely no reason at all. I just enjoyed it. There was a song, Superstitious Foundation, on YouTube. Have you heard that?
No.
I have never heard of that.
I swear to open a tab. Superstitious Foundation on YouTube. I don't remember the guy who wrote it. Again, I'm bad with names. Superstitious Foundations. I heard it on YouTube. It has a music video built from the containment breach like models and such. It's really, really good, and it is catchy.
Oh, this is by CG5?
It is catchy as a motherfucker. It's really,
gosh.
really catchy. It's really, really good. Listen to it. It's good. Like, not right this second, but listen to it if you haven't. It's really, really good. I enjoyed it. They really, really killed it. And a couple of my items, one of my items that is almost never, the water ball, is actually referenced in that story. It's like, I know you're only doing that because it rhymes.
The water ball.
That's awesome.
I've never read the water ball.
My more unknown stuff sort of made it in there. But it's a really, really good song. That's just like the idea of that like shit that I was involved in, had a hand in making, inspired some other guy to make a song, or make art, or a video game, or all this kind of stuff. It's just really, really cool. It's just really, really cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, I was briefly involved with the original containment, not the Unity version, but the original containment breach.
Yeah, remember that.
I wrote some of the flavor text for that.
That's right.
There's a note from DrGears and a bunch of notes from a doctor that's being chased by 106
Very
through
cool.
the area. I wrote all those.
Very cool.
I think they made it into the new game. I don't remember. But I actually wrote that. I actually consulted with some of the devs and such for a little bit, and then I fucked off because it's what I do. but it was really, really cool. But it was a lot of fun. But no, I love offsite, creations and such. But it's one of those, if you want it to be, part of beyond just like fan art or whatever, fan works. Bring it over to the site, kind of put it on here and have it be a part of things. It's like, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, then it ain't part of things. There's fan fiction. That's fine. But don't write your own little pocket universe and make a big deal about it. Bring it over to the site, and yeah, it's bare knuckle, but there's a reason. But as far as like art and fan works and stuff, yeah, I hit it up, man.
Super cool. Super cool. It's actually like CG5 is actually the person who made this. I instantly recognize him because they're a huge deal. I've invited them to this podcast and have not received a response on, surprisingly. But
well, there you go.
That'll definitely be linked in the description. That is super cool.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. Okay, and another thing that Jack Rabbit wanted me to ask, kind of related to this.
Okay.
I am sort of paraphrasing her words, of course, but what do you want to see offsite creators improve upon when adapting on-site works?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
One of the things, because there's a lot of outside stuff. There's a lot of outside sort of things, and when you're trying to encapsulate, a lot of the works for people that maybe aren't a part of the thing, you're going to get, there's going to be sort of compression errors. Again, looking at YouTube, there's a lot of things that don't exactly mesh right, that don't exactly fit.
Yeah.
People making content off-site, whether it's movies or music or art or whatever, because of the nature of the foundation being very flexible, I think you have a lot of leeway. By the same token, try to keep, the meat of things. Like, first of all, read what you're doing. Like, sit down and read the article, look over it a little bit, get a feel for things before you just kind of go in. Because I've seen people make very simple errors because...
Well, the question is, how intentional is that, right? I think a lot of people are very, very quick to point at the chasm between on-site content and the, social media, the media platform, the media channel, the YouTubes, adaptations that we can see on those platforms, and how there's really a large gap to fidelity. So that's what DrGears is talking about. Just sit down and actually read it. I would argue that the same gap exists between what the site should be and the ideals of the site, what it was founded upon, and what really makes it unique, what really differentiates it from fan fiction and lets it be the genre that it is. There's an equal gap between those ideals and where the foundation, the wiki, the SCP Wiki is currently today. If you're talking about a lack of fidelity translated to a different tier of a medium, it's the same thing. The gap between current SCP Wiki content and their adaptation on YouTube is smaller, in my opinion, than the gap between the philosophical pinnings, the philosophical linchpins of the SCP Wiki, of writing on the SCP Wiki, and of containment fiction more generally, and what you currently see on the SCP Wiki. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So the advice that DrGears is giving in context from YouTubers to the actual content, I would also think is equally applicable to current SCP authors and, the past of SCP, or at least what it was intended to be, and what made it special.
Kind of obvious people didn't read stuff. The foundation and the wiki is first and foremost a writing site. Read stuff. But generally,
I kind of like to subvert that. I think it's a writing site first, but by this point, only nominally. It's really equivalently a social media site.
I don't really have a problem with too much. I guess I haven't hit a lot of stuff that's like really offensive. And I feel like really like being like, this needs to change. And maybe other people have. But I think one of the issues is you have to be careful how you present stuff. Because these are people's babies, man. Some of this work people have worked with for a long time. Look at mine.
The whole time you're listening to Dr. Gears give prescriptive advice about these YouTube channels, be sure to also run them one step further and in the opposite direction backwards to the current SCP authors in regards to the success, the shoulders that they're standing on that is giving them the wiki.
You have to kind of approach with a degree of delicacy, and especially if you're like presenting up like a tale or something like that, you're presenting as like the defining blank. You got to be real careful with that, because there isn't a defining anything. It just is. And
yep.
But I haven't really read anything that's really like so objectionable I want it to change. There's, generally speaking, it's like if something's bad, it'll just not take off, or at least my opinion.
True.
But I would ask that, if you're going to make stuff, read the content. You kind of get into stuff, and you kind of put it in the
That's fair. That's fair point.
Spirit that's written. But most of the outside content that I've seen, sort of up close, is generally pretty great. And I really haven't anything too objectionable. Again, a lot of gay romance.
Yeah. God, that's a shame, man. That's a shame. But yeah, so he was actually talking about Dr. Bob earlier. He's talking about Dr. Bob doing a cover of his SCP-001, the prototype, and so it's interesting just to hear Dr. Gears give an approving nod to Dr. Bob of all people.
With Iceberg.
If you don't know, Dr. Bob is that YouTube channel that like does the really crude cartoon adaptations of SCPs. But yeah, I mean, not to rant too much, but that's my point. Like, if you ever watch a Dr. Bob, like, okay, is it entertaining? Yeah. Is it good content, I guess? I mean, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be popular if it wasn't, I guess, in some ways. But, are you really getting the experience? Are you really participating in containment fiction? Well, absolutely not, because in order to actually adapt it to the YouTube channel and the video format, you have to take away everything that makes it unique as a format literarily. You have to take away everything about the written genre that is unique. And so by the time it gets to Dr. Bob, there's really nothing containment fiction about it. You're just really taking the monsters and the stories, the narratives that are put in there. I think that's partially why we see a lot of mining from YouTube channels like Dr. Bob of the modern SCP Wiki stuff, is because it's, the modern SCP Wiki stuff is trying its hardest to be a different form of fiction. It's trying its hardest to knock down the boundaries and the limitations and really the definition of what containment fiction is, so that it can have more in common with other types of fiction, fan fiction, for example. So in the same way that by the time you're watching something from the SCP Wiki conveyed on a Dr. Bob YouTube channel and you're not really getting the experience, I would say that a lot of current SCP authors are writing on the SCP Wiki with the same criticism applying to them. By the time you're reading their works, you're not really reading containment fiction. You're reading the most nominal and superficial translation of it into basically a different art form.
But outside of, shine on, you crazy diamond, all the better. But how can you get outside of like personal preference stuff? It's like, I don't know if we necessarily need an anthropomorphic SCP item dating sim. It exists. I don't know if we needed it. But that kind of thing. It's. I don't really. I wouldn't want someone sort of dictating down to me, how to express my artistic vision, especially if I'm trying my best and trying to keep kind of close. So I'm not going to do that to other people. But at least know your content. At least know your content.
I mean, it's one thing to oppress people with your ideas. I mean, but just sharing your ideas. I mean, God, if you don't do it, especially someone like Dr. Gears, especially with something like the SCP Wiki. I mean, who's going to do it? I mean, me. No one listens to me. I'm fine with that, obviously. But that's why we need people like Dr. Gears. I mean, that's why this interview is valuable. It's why the one that WhiteGuard did on the site is valuable. I mean, I'm personally so thankful for Dr. Gears' words. I think that he's a fantastic leader. He's a great mind. He's as good of a soul, a writing spirit, as he is a father figure to the SCP Wiki, and as good as he is an author as well.
Content, and if you're
do your due diligence.
Read the stories. Kind of think, if you're doing like a story thing, like read it. Go over it, make sure you know what to do. The Exploring series, if you've not watched, there's a bunch of SCP stuff, and generally does very, very well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Very, very, very well researched, very, very well done.
They do.
They would be a good example of that.
And they are not ashamed to really, really indulge the viewer. I think that some of their videos are like hours and hours long.
And thankfully, I
can't imagine the work that goes into that YouTube channel. Just it has to be full time. It has to be a full time job, or you have to have a team of people. You know, I couldn't even keep up with the SCP wikis. Just reading them here.
Really bad examples, but I probably could, but I don't want to be that guy. So.
No, that's fair.
But never was.
I think a lot of people who are listening to this right now, who are at least really active in the outside SCP community, can probably think of one very bad example right now.
Yeah, probably.
That we recently had an issue with.
Probably one or two that could probably.
Oh, they're talking about it wasn't SCP Illustrated. It was somebody else. I think one of them was Dr. Bob, but basically there was a whole snafu on the Twitter where someone got some pronouns wrong. And so basically that was a huge deal, and I don't think it was malicious, but it's kind of the way it was interpreted.
Go away, but it was.
I will say just briefly. We talked about this more in my episode of SCP Authors and Almost with Jackrabbit. So if you want to hear more about this topic, go ahead and check that out. I will say one thing that authors really appreciate is when you adapt their characters correctly. Just do your due diligence and don't change things that shouldn't be changed for any reason, like pronouns, for example.
No, don't go screwing around. This stuff is the way that it is.
Yep.
Maybe it works, maybe it don't. But things are the way they are. Don't go googling stuff for no reason. It's just jarring. Don't screw stuff, man.
Right.
Due diligence. Don't be an asshole. Generally,
exactly.
That's not even.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, if you're gonna essentially base your business model on other people's works, I mean, it's really the least you can do is to get it right. If you're gonna basically be making money from other people's efforts, not that you're like, once again, the Dr. Bob is, it's got a lot of work put into it, I'm sure. Same with SCP Illustrated. But I mean, if you're gonna, your business model is basically 100% reliant on other people giving their content to you for free so that you can use it. So, I mean, just based on that alone, there are a few ethical and moral considerations. One of them is what DrGears is saying. Obviously, just come on. Just at least honor the author. At least honor the author. Because you're getting paid. It'd be different if you're like, whatever. But I mean, you're getting freaking paid. This is your livelihood. So I mean, just thank them. And then another thing is something that we're starting to see people do is basically giving some of that money that you make back, to the actual content creators from the wiki. I think that's a great thing.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Do your diligence. Wow. Do your
diligence.
Diligence.
Last question.
Yeah.
Be diligent.
Pull the segue lever.
Segue. So, just to wrap things up here, I'll ask you the one question I ask every guest at the end of this podcast. DrGears, it was great to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Absolute pleasure.
Great to have Dr.
Sure.
Gears.
Hopefully so nice to hear him.
Others, I don't know. We'll see if I have anything to say.
Yeah. This has been just a fantastic, very, very thought-provoking, lot of discussion sort of podcast. So check that out on the link that talks about me reacting to other stuff. I think there's this is going to be like the 13th video in that series. It's been great.
Can't wait to see you for a third interview.
There we go.
But
Yep.
All right, let me ask you.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice you have for any creators out there? It can be specifically SCP authors, writers in general, or just creative people in general, whatever you want. What is a piece of advice you have?
Okay. Last time I answered this, I did really crappy. And I'm probably going to do it not much better, but I'm going to try. Writing's hard, man. It is. It seems like, you just put words on a page. No, you're not. This is creation. This is life. This is a big deal.
Yep. And so that's why, just to interject my own workings here. That's why I take this pretty seriously. That's why I do stuff like this. That's why it's so refreshing to hear DrGears say some of the things that I've been saying for years. That's why I take this very seriously, is because underneath all of this drama, underneath all of this clutter, underneath all of these ulterior motives is, a highly meaningful thing, writing. And the technology of the genre that SCP Wiki provides, I think, is an amazing thing. I really do think it's very significant. I think that it's really, as I've said elsewhere, to the mockery of some other people, that it's a cultural export. I think it's going to be remembered, and the genre has the capacity to be as as I think is solidified as something like the haiku. I mean, where you write in that genre. It's just kind of like a thing, all its own. So yeah, once again, that's why I think DrGears and I are saying the same things a lot of the time, is because we see this as a deeply spiritual thing, and we see this as something that originates internally, that obviously has to brush shoulders with external concerns, but ultimately should be really a feedback loop to the sanctity, for lack of a better word, of the process and of the author's spirituality, being sort of the prime mover and the prime holder of that activity.
Piece of advice,
not upvotes,
that I would stress to anybody. God, follow your voice. Every good author,
your voice
that's very capable, or just
I mean, once again, okay, you have to be following me with the videos that I've done, but we once again saw DJ Cactus first, we saw Randomini, and now we're listening to DrGears, and this is two. Randomini and DrGears have contradicted what DJ Cactus has to say. If you listen to the video, DJ Cactus's writing philosophy boils down to, I want to write what the most people are going to like. I want to write what was going to get me the most upvotes. He says this explicitly in the interview. He says that if I can get more people to like it, that is to say, if I can get more upvotes on this piece of work, then I don't give a shit about the format. I don't give a shit about the definitions of what makes this a genre. That's his school of thought. And so this is the second time in as many subsequent interviews that we've heard more intelligent, better role model authors say that your own voice should be what you're writing for. Your own voice should be more important than overly capitulating to the concerns and expectations of a perceived audience.
Lovecraft is wordy. It's a wordy motherfucker. You get things like that, but you can tell at a glance when people write stuff, and there's a reason for that. Write in the style that flows for you, and if that's some Victorian Gothic style or some straight up Zoomer text speak, fantastic.
But if it's basically I'm going to write to try to capture the lowest common denominator of viewer so that I can have the most mass appeal. I mean, you're not writing for your own voice, you're writing for the charts. And that's just an age-old thing with any art. There's always been a intensive struggle and battle between writing for the art and writing for other people's consumption of it. And so that's, once again, what we see at play here. And I think the SCP Wiki is lost, particularly after this week of reading. It is a hopeless case.
What works for you, and write what you want, because there's sort of this perception, I've struggled with it too, to sort of write for a genre or with a goal in mind. Just write because I write what I write, and when I write horror, it's generally shit I'm scared of. I'm a huge fraidy cat. I really, really am. And if I can make other people afraid, it helps, and it's fun. It's one of the things you can visualize is, they say, put yourself in your story. Yeah, do that. Imagine, the emotions that you want to bring out in somebody, because that's what art is. You're bringing out an emotion in someone. Is it love? Is it hate? Is it disgust? Whatever.
Good stuff.
It doesn't
Good
matter.
Stuff.
When you write, it should trigger an emotion. It is not a vehicle for a message. It is not a example. It's not. You're trying to trigger emotion. Words are just a vehicle for that.
Yep.
So focus on that. Also, the last piece. Get them the first line. If your first sentence is secure, if you can hook them on the first sentence, you can drag them through 1,200 pages of work. If you don't
That's such a good comment. So, just once again, this will be the last time, hopefully, I talk about it. But yeah, so, on the last stream when I was covering one of the longer articles in the SCP or trying to, one of the things I noticed and said is that basically if you can hear someone singing for 30 seconds, you basically got the understanding, If you draw that out to 12 hours of them singing, you're probably not going to come across something that is suddenly incredibly virtuosic. And so that, got me thinking, and that's part of the reason why I ditched reading yesterday's SCPs is because, once you sort of get that was my 30 seconds. That was my 30 seconds. of the SCP, and it's just going to be more of the same. And so, if I can do that for an article that's way too long, I unfortunately have to do the same thing for really a string of content that is not going to make it up to par at all. I think with the threshold of quality that I would like to have on this show, because honestly, the show was only going to be as good as the SCPs that were accepted to the site, and it just wasn't good enough.
First one, you got nothing. You got nothing.
Oh yeah.
You know, get them on that first line. And if you're looking through some of my work, I try. I do my damn best. Hook them on the first one.
You gotta get them, man.
It seems silly.
Best foot forward.
You, if your first sentence is evocative,
such a good piece of advice.
You can get them hooked for the whole book.
It's huge.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and by the way, we don't see that on the SCP Wiki. You know, that's the problem. Especially, once again, I said this last time. You know, if you have just a ridiculous amount of content coming in, the pressure for you to make your article clearly superior on the first sentence, if you can't do that, then I'm sorry. You know, you've lost your chance. Next. We got a line of a million people out there, and your first note was shitty and sour. You know, I'm sorry. Next. You know, we ain't got time for this shit.
100% true. And that's there's another issue that not issue, another. What is the proper way to say this? A challenge that comes with the SCP Wiki, especially considering you have to start with the special containment procedures. Yeah. But that's just what makes it so
for sure.
so much more fun.
For sure.
Yeah, it's with that you get more of a slower.
Yep. You know, it's hard. It's hard. It's easy to make the genre into fan fiction. It's easy to write dumb Neo-Lol Foundation dialogue. It's easy to retroactively construct an SCP article from a one-liner joke. It's easy to take what you could easily put on a fan fiction site and slap it onto an SCP number and put it into a containment procedure and in description, and basically you put what you've written on a fan fiction site into the addenda. It's really easy to do that. It's easy to write a huge novel with characters and arches, and it's easier to do that than it is to abide by the more strenuous, rigorous definitions and demands of what good containment fiction should be.
You have to pick your way through. It brings you in, it makes you interested, and then you kind of halfway through, it's like, oh wait, this thing's bad. Oh, this shit is bad.
Yep.
But
that's what my week has been like, by the way. That's my week right there. I think we read a total of 8 articles, probably 9. That doesn't include the ones that I looked at that I decided to not cover, whose negative rating was just too high or too low. There were 2 good articles, 2 in the whole week. And I kind of looked at the ones I would have done tonight, and I wasn't impressed. And they're long. So, I mean, sorry, this is too bad. Okay, this is going to be it for this series of videos for the BitChute. We're going to go ahead and close that out and turn that off. So thank you all very, very much for checking out the BitChute channel. Keep coming back, because we're going to keep doing this. Once again, if you'd like to interact live, hit the Twitch. I don't know if we'll do this every night. Once again, it depends on my schedule when we go back to work. But for the foreseeable future, the next month or so, we'll definitely do this probably every night. I love listening to SCP content, podcasts, and things like this. I don't love reading SCPs. Okay, catch you next time. And for those of us still in this stream, we will go ahead and just finish this up. There's about 10 minutes left.
Is sort of like the first line. It's like you have a picture in a general description. It's like, why the hell do they have armed guards for a chair? Like, what? Oh, that's why. and that's how you get them.
It's like, that's exactly right, man. That's exactly right.
That's going on.
See,
Okay.
that's the point of the containment procedures. The point of containment procedures are to foreshadow. That's really, it took a while, by the way. The first SCPs, clearly, but, 4chan, the first one's written for edit this, and then even into the wiki itself. It took a while for the containment procedures to really come into to their own maturity. And I think it was on 4chan, but there was finally one that was posted that really actually treated the containment procedures usefully. It was the first time they were actually used at all and used correctly. And of course, as DrGears just said, it's a foreshadowing tool for you to snag the reader, sort of outline what it is that you'll be covering. We saw some decent containment procedures this week, I'd say.
100%. Okay. Well, I think with that, we're good to go ahead and wrap this up.
Alrighty.
thank you so much for coming on a second time, Dr. Gears.
A second time.
Very sorry about what happened in the first recording, but I think we can happily say that this one turned out a lot better, and we definitely improved on it at least.
Good.
That's the situation.
At the very least. So interview, what, 15.5?
Something like that.
Very cool.
Alrighty.
I'm tired as hell. I want to end this.
All right, let's wrap her up. Okay, so go ahead and stop now, or...
Yeah, let me quickly say thank you guys all so much for listening. I'll see you guys
you're
next time.
welcome.
Links to everything we talked about are in the description. Go check them out. Go check out that AO3 now. Go read some of the stories so that you don't go to sleep tonight. And I'll see you guys next time.
All
also,
right.
stay tuned and subscribe to see the episode of SCP Authors Anonymous, which will eventually feature Dr. Gears
So
with some other person.
Some strange because it's basically ended, but we still have 9 minutes in the video.
Sorry, I was chuckling.
Every time I pause it, I turn it back on and somebody's laughing. Have you noticed this? Very strange.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you guys for listening. Bye-bye,
Yeah,
everybody.
no problem, man. Thanks for doing the interview.
Hello,
Very
hello.
cool.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Create Stuff podcast. It really
You're
means a lot
welcome.
to me that you actually managed to make it this far. I really
Yeah,
didn't know
of
you
course,
did.
I loved
barely
it.
managed to make it this far when I was editing, but here we are, I guess. Oh man, this is unscripted. It's a Tuesday before this releases. Man, it has been hard to edit this, but I wanted to get it done fast because I just think this was such a cool interview and it was really cool.
It
to
was
talk
very
to Dr.
cool.
Gears. Thank you guys all for watching. If you're watching this live on YouTube right now with the premiere, say hi, hello. I'm in chat too, but I'm not actually listening. Hey, don't tell him I said this, but Shawn Saxum, that guy's really falling off, isn't he? Just start.
All right, I'm probably going to cut it there. I'm not really interested in what he has to say. I hate to say that, but I'm more interested in his guests and what they have to say. So, all right, well, we've been live for about an hour. This is just so much more pleasant to me. I would still like to do some SCPs. I don't think I'm going to take those off the table completely, but I think I'm also going to do RPCs as well. And if anything is ever posted to the SCP commune again, maybe I'll do those. We're just going to branch out. It was gonna end me very quickly to try to do that. So kudos for other people who have tried something similar and lasted longer. But I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing about me that I couldn't stand more than 4 days of that. But I think it's a good thing. I think it says good things about me. I hope. But anyway, so next time, I plan to do this tomorrow. What is tomorrow? Saturday night? Yeah. Plan to do this tomorrow. We will probably get into our first take of SCP Authors Anomalous. We got really interesting lineups here. It looks like Rounderhouse, Jack Dragon are on one, and I think that one's going to piss me off the most. DrGears and Clef are on another one. I think I will much prefer listening to that, but we'll probably do the Rounderhouse and Jack Dragon one just to spread out the DrGears just a little bit. And of course, it's always fun, I'm sure, to see me get irrationally pissed off at this stuff. There's also a Jack Rabbit, and other ones. So we'll see. This should be a lot of fun. I really feel good about this change of direction. It just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work the other way. So thanks for joining, and we'll do this again. Of course, you can see these streams up on the YouTube channel. There's a link to that as well that I'll make sure is pretty apparent. But yeah, so hopefully this has been enjoyable, and we'll check it tomorrow night. This has been Lack of Lepers, also known as SCP-CRMP. Take it easy.